dignitaries on the dais, distinguished people in the audience. I think that's all. Everybody is distinguished, so I will stop there. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're at a stage where energy transition has become an extremely important event. The energy sector under the threat of climate change will be transformed whether we want it or not. And in the 2014 report that I chaired for the Planning Commission called Low Carbon Strategy for Inclusive Growth, we had observed that climate change is here. It's not something in the future. And today we know that climate change has been even more visible. We get extreme events all the time. Their intensities have increased. Heat stress, cyclones, etc., we see all the time. Now, I think what we have to also recognize is that India has promised to have net zero by 2070. And how are we going to attain this? I think we have at IRADe done a number of studies on this to see what kind of strategies we could have. And we try to really work out some optimal strategies for doing that. But let me just go briefly, what is that we have to deal with? Say coal sector. Coal is the very most dominant sector. And in terms of climate change, one of the most emitting sector. So I think we cannot really do without coal in some sense. Some measure of coal would be continuing. And therefore, we need to worry about how to make coal almost zero emitting or clean coal. And that, I think for that, we need to work a lot on carbon capture and storage. And that's one area in which I think India should really work and concentrate on. Because no matter what we say, we will continue to have coal. We cannot completely disengage from coal because of the large number of people, millions of people employed in the coal market. And therefore, we have to work out a transition for how to phase out coal. Actually, IRADE is organizing a meeting on the G20, T20 on how to go energy transformation. We'll discuss these issues there on July 4th at Meridian. And I think coal is very important for us, and we need to work out strategies for phasing out with minimizing the impact on people, and at the same time minimizing the emissions that coal will generate. Second, I think issue is the oil and gas is another major sector where we are getting, emitting. And that, I think, our whole effort at electric vehicles is really the right direction to go. We need to worry about electric vehicles, but we should recognize that if you have a lot of electric vehicles, the requirement for electricity will go up by something like 20%. So EVs do not come easily, and unless we have an electric sector, electricity generation, which is virtually carbon-free, net zero, EVs would not be net zero. Of course, it would have the benefit of having less urban pollution and so on. But EV is one area. We are also talking about what is the future of oil industry. In some sense, the world over, we can see that the EVs are taking place rapidly. The demand for petroleum products is bound to be constrained in some sense, the growth. And one would see that, an oil and gas sector, oil sector certainly would gradually, the demand globally will come down. At the same time, I think if I were an oil producer in the Middle East, I will say I would like to maximize my profit value of my resources, reserves, and therefore I will constrain this demand to push up the price in the short run as much as possible. So that's the kind of scenario one can expect. I think in terms of gas, we have target of having 15% gas in the industry, in our energy basket by 2030, which is a very ambitious target. And the fact that we are importing 50% of our gas today, nearly 50%, this is even harder to do. So we had the recent committee ministry had set up, which I chaired, on gas pricing. We had recommended a number of things which would say that, yes, we must push gas exploration and production in India. And for that, we must give total freedom for marketing and pricing to most of the people who come and we want to attract for exploration and production. I think we also have to worry about ethanol and the role of ethanol and hydrogen. Hydrogen, I become somewhat skeptical because it is not a fuel source itself, but you need something else to convert to produce hydrogen, and it are also issues of packing, transporting, and carrying is there. So hydrogen has a role, at least in very niche areas, which we will certainly have to exploit. At the same time, I think ethanol, particularly cellulosic ethanol, has a good opportunity to replace some of the oil sectors, oil consumption. But that requires organizing systems in such a way that we are able to collect the cellulosic biomass, convert it into this, and do it in an economic way. At the moment, it is a bit expensive, but I think one can expect that we'll work out ways to make it work. The renewables are certainly the biggest hope we have. Solar and wind prices have come down dramatically. Battery technology is improving rapidly. Even non-lithium kind of battery technologies are being developed, and at least sodium batteries can play a huge role in stationary storage of electricity. I would argue that renewables can play a huge role, but they need a balancing power. For that, we have a number of options. We could say we have hydropower, but hydropower, particularly I think what is called off-river closed-loop hydropower, small hydro plants scattered over the country can really provide you lots of balancing power. And such plants can be built at half the cost than normal hydro plants and done in 2 years or so. So there is a prospect of providing hydropower for balancing renewables. There is also possibility of using trade and electricity trade among South Asian countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, India, where we can get balancing power from hydropower from Nepal and Bhutan and provide them during low hydro or other areas power from our other plants. So I think trade is another possibilities, and I think what we really need is really have an integrated viewpoint on what our energy strategy is going to be. We had prepared an integrated energy policy in 2004 when I was member of the Planning Commission, and I think we need to have another look at this, revise it in the light of the dramatic stress that the country and the world are facing due to climate change. And I do believe that we can do it and we will do it, should be our motto. And I do believe that we have huge problems with coal, which we must tackle, and that's very, very important. Renewables, balancing, etc., I don't think are insurmountable problems or unsurmountable. I do believe, however, that hydrogen has a limited role, but certainly in niche applications it will be very useful. And I think we need to think about a whole policy structure that takes into account all these various aspects into account in an integrated manner. Thank you all.